I still remember the sound of the clock that morning, slow, steady, almost thoughtful. It filled the quiet kitchen as I stared at the empty chair where my son, Michael, used to sit. Even after all these years, I still put an extra napkin on the table. Old habits don't retire easily, especially the ones you build around the people you love. Michael disappeared 12 years ago. One ordinary Tuesday. No signs, no fights, no warning. The police tried in the beginning. Questions, flashlights in the woods, calls to neighbors. But after a while, their footsteps grew softer. People move on when the trail does not. A mother doesn't. Not really. My daughter, Emily, was 15 then. A quiet, observant girl. She didn't talk about her brother much, but sometimes I'd find her sitting on the edge of his bed, not crying, just thinking. I never disturbed her. Children handle loss in their own secret ways. Life didn't end, but it thinned. I worked mornings at a small grocery store, stocking shelves before customers came in. I liked the predictability. Bananas in the front, bread on the right. My mind stayed busy. My heart stayed heavy. Every day before walking inside, I checked my phone. Just a glance, just in case. One missed call could have rewritten everything. But there was never anything new, only silence, pretending to be normal. Friends stopped asking questions. Families stopped offering theories. People didn't mean to forget. They simply had lives that kept pulling them forward. Mine stayed anchored to the night my son vanished. Emily grew up quietly and gently. By 27, she had her own place and a modest job at a marketing office. She wasn't unhappy, but she wasn't thriving either. She visited on Sundays with supermarket flowers and stories about her week. I treasured the visits even when she spoke little. She was all the light the house had left. Yet sometimes, in the middle of our conversations, she seemed far away, like she was holding words behind her teeth. I noticed. Mothers always do, but I didn't push. I didn't want to lose another child by asking the wrong question. For a long time, life ran on that quiet routine. Then came the day she pulled up in front of my house in a luxury car. It was early spring, the kind of morning that makes you hopeful without reason. I was on the porch with my coffee when the car rolled in, smooth, silent, and completely out of place in my simple neighborhood. The paint shimmered like deep ocean water. The windows were dark. Even the way it stopped felt controlled and elegant. And then the door opened. Emily stepped out. She looked different. Confident, composed, dressed in a coat I had never seen before, her hair neatly styled, her posture tall. She didn't smile. She didn't rush toward me the way she usually did. She walked up the path with a calm, steady purpose. When she reached the steps, she didn't sit beside me. She just said 2 words, "Get in." Her voice was low and even, not angry, not panicked, just certain. A strange chill went through me. I set my mug down slowly. "Emily, what's going on?" She didn't answer. She simply opened the passenger door. I felt something shifting, like the air before a storm. Emily had been holding something back for months, maybe years, and now, whatever it was, she wasn't hiding it anymore. I stood and walked toward the car, moving like the world had grown thicker around me. When I reached the door, she placed a gentle hand on my arm. It was warm, but her mood was not. Inside, the car smelled of clean leather and cold air. Everything felt foreign, sleek and polished in a way our lives had never been. Emily got in on her side and closed the door softly. She didn't start the engine. She just stared ahead, her hands resting on the wheel. "Emily," I said quietly, "you're scaring me." A small breath escaped her, the kind you release when you've made up your mind. She didn't look at me. "Mom, there's something you should know." I watched her profile, so grown, yet so young in the way her jaw trembled for a moment. "Is it about work? Money?" She shook her head. "Then what is it?" Only then did she turn. Her eyes were unsettled, like waves that couldn't decide where to break. "It's about Michael." My whole body went still. My pulse slowed, or maybe it raced. I couldn't tell. The name hit me like cold water down the spine. Familiar, beloved, and painful. Before I could speak, Emily reached into the compartment between us and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. She didn't look at it. She held it out like she wanted it gone from her hands. "Read this," she whispered. I took the paper carefully. It felt oddly warm, like she'd been holding it for a long time before this moment. When I unfolded it, my breath caught. The handwriting, slanted, uneven, a little messy, was unmistakable. Michael's. My son's. Handwriting. The date at the top was from 2 months ago. My chest tightened. My vision blurred. I blinked hard, willing the words to stay still so I could read. I didn't get far before emotion took over. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means Emily finally brought you the truth." I pressed my hand to my lips. The world outside the car went silent. The trees, the passing cars, even the wind. Everything faded. Slowly, I turned toward my daughter. "You knew?" I whispered. Emily's eyes filled, but she held her composure with painful restraint. She nodded once. "Mom, I didn't just know. I've known for a long time." The paper fell into my lap. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. A dozen questions rose at once, each sharper than the last. Why didn't she tell me? How long had she been hiding this? Where was he? Was he alive? Why right through her? Why now? Emily looked at me as if she could hear the questions, but she didn't speak until she had to. "Mom," she whispered, "Michael isn't missing." The air inside the car changed, heavier, denser. She took a breath, preparing herself for words that would change everything. He never was. For a moment, I couldn't move. Emily's words hung in the air like something sharp, something that could cut if I breathed too deeply. My hands tightened on my knees. The leather seat felt cold beneath me. "Emily," I whispered, "what do you mean he was never missing?" She didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers the way she used to do before telling the truth about a broken vase or a bad grade. Only this time, the truth was bigger, older, heavier. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. "Mom, Michael left, but not the way we thought, and not for the reasons everyone said." I felt the urge to reach for her hand, but I stopped myself. Something inside me was shifting, something between trust and fear. "Keep talking," I said softly. She nodded. "I'll tell you everything, but not here." Then she started the engine. The car hummed quietly as she pulled away from the house, my house, where I had waited 12 long years for a knock on the door that never came, a house where hope lived like a stubborn guest who refused to leave. As we drove, Emily kept glancing at me, checking my breathing, my posture. I could feel her worry, but I couldn't feel anything clearly myself. My thoughts were tangled. My heart was trying to run ahead of her story. We drove out of town, past the old bakery, past the church where both my children were baptized, past the gas station where Michael used to buy sodas after school. Each familiar corner felt like a small reminder of the years I spent grieving a boy who, according to my daughter, hadn't vanished at all. The highway opened in front of us, long and quiet. Emily's hands tightened on the wheel. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. "To someone who can explain better than I can. Someone who should have talked to you a long time ago." "Who?" She didn't answer. The suspense wrapped around me like a cold blanket. I watched the world pass by through the window. Bare trees, old barns, a scattering of houses. Ordinary things that suddenly looked like part of a different world. One where I didn't know the truth about my own son. My mind ran back to the letter. Michael's handwriting, his words, the tremble in Emily's voice. If he wasn't missing, if he wrote that letter 2 months ago, if Emily had known, then what had my last 12 years been? Finally, after nearly 40 minutes of silence, Emily turned down a small country road. The gravel crunched under the tires. She drove slowly, as if giving me time to breathe. I looked ahead and saw a house. Not a mansion, but nice. Bigger than ours, newer than ours. Wide siding, wide porch, a swing that moved a little in the wind. It looked lived in, but not loud. Peaceful. Emily parked the car and sat still for a long moment. I watched her chest rise and fall slowly, like she was preparing herself. Then she turned to me. "Mom, I need you to promise me something." My throat tightened. "What?" "No yelling, no rushing inside, no panicking." She swallowed. "Just listen, please. Emily, you know I'm not someone who—" She cut me off with a small, sad shake of her head. "Mom, this isn't an ordinary conversation." The way she said it made my stomach twist. I nodded slowly. "I'll listen." She got out and walked around to open my door, just like she used to do when she was little and played chauffeur. But this time, it wasn't a game. Her hand trembled slightly as she offered it to help me out. As we walked toward the house, I felt a strange heaviness rising in my chest. Something old, something close to dread. Emily knocked once, firmly. Not the knock of a stranger, the knock of someone who belonged there. Footsteps approached, slow, steady. The door opened. A man stood there. I didn't recognize him at first. His hair was shorter, darker, his shoulders broader, his face more grown. But the eyes, those eyes, were the same eyes that looked up at me when he asked for another helping of pancakes. The same eyes that crinkled when he laughed. The same eyes that made me say, "You're my boy," over and over again. My breath left my body in a rush. "Michael," I whispered. He froze. Like the sound of his own name coming from me hit him too hard. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came. He looked older but also younger in some strange way, like he had been carrying something heavy for a long time, and now that I was here, he wasn't sure how to hold it anymore. I felt my legs weaken, but I didn't fall. I gripped the porch railing until my knuckles turned pale. He stepped outside, slow and unsure. Emily stayed beside me, her hand gently pressing against my back, steadying me. I stared at him, barely able to breathe. 12 years of longing, praying, searching,
all collapsing into one impossible moment. "You're alive," I said, my voice cracking. He nodded once. I took a step toward him. My heart was racing in a way I didn't know it still could. "Why?" I whispered. "Why didn't you come home? Why didn't you call? Why didn't you tell me?" He closed his eyes briefly, as if the questions were hits he had been preparing for but still couldn't absorb without wincing. "Mom, I wanted to," he said softly. The way he said it, broken, honest, made something inside me ache. "Then why didn't you?" My voice rose slightly, but Emily touched my arm gently, reminding me of my promise. Michael looked over his shoulder, then stepped aside. "Come inside, please. It's a long story." I hesitated. The threshold felt symbolic, like crossing a line between the life I had lived and the life I was about to learn had been happening behind my back. Inside, the house was simple but warm. A small living room with soft couches, a dining table with a few papers scattered on it, and pictures on the walls. Landscapes, not people. No family photos, no celebrations, no signs of a life shared with loved ones. That alone told me something heavy. We sat down, Michael in the armchair, Emily and I on the couch. He looked at me carefully, as if afraid I might shatter. I folded my hands tightly and waited. He took a deep breath. "Mom, the day I left, I didn't run away. I was taken." My heart lurched. "Taken? By who?" But he shook his head quickly. "Not kidnapped. Not that kind of taken." His voice lowered. "I was taken out of our lives. Pulled out." I stared at him, confused. He looked at Emily. She nodded at him gently, encouraging him. Michael ran a hand through his hair. "Back then, I got involved with someone I shouldn't have, someone older, someone with money, someone who made promises that weren't real." The room grew still. I felt a strange unease crawl up my spine. "Michael, what kind of involvement?" He swallowed. "Financial? Emotional? Everything. They convinced me I was special. They convinced me I could have a different life. They convinced me I didn't need anyone else."
Emily exhaled softly beside me. She knew all of this. She had been living with this truth alone. I blinked slowly. "Why didn't you reach out when you realized the truth?" Michael looked down at his hands. "Because by then, they had control over everything I did. Every move, every phone call, every dollar." My pulse quickened. "Who was this person?" He hesitated. "Someone powerful, someone connected, someone who disappeared the moment I tried to break away." I leaned forward. "Did they hurt you?" He shook his head, but his eyes told another story. "Not in the way you're thinking, but they controlled me. They used fear, pressure, promises, money. And when I finally got out, I was ashamed." My voice softened. "Ashamed of what?" He looked up, and the pain in his eyes was sharp and raw. "Of leaving you, of letting you think I abandoned the family.
of being too weak to come home. I pressed my hand to my chest. "Michael, you were a child," he whispered. I was 17, old enough to think I knew better, young enough to believe a lie. I glanced at Emily. She was staring at the floor, guilt wrapped around her shoulders. I asked her quietly, "How long have you known?" She hesitated. "A few years." "A few years?" My voice broke. "Emily, why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes finally met mine. "Because it wasn't my secret to give, Mom. Michael made me promise. He said you had suffered enough. He needed to get his life stable before he faced you." I turned back to Michael. "And now you're ready?" He closed his eyes for a moment. "No. But waiting hasn't made it any easier." The honesty in that answer stunned me. I sat back on the couch, breathing slowly, absorbing the truth one fragile piece at a time. This wasn't the reunion I had imagined for 12 years. There were no joyful tears, no long embrace, just the weight of everything unsaid. Finally, I spoke quietly. "Then why the letter? Why now?" Michael reached under the coffee table and pulled out a small envelope. He held it out to me. "Because something happened. Something that changes what happens next." I stared at the envelope. My fingers trembled as I took it. "What happened?" I whispered. He looked at me with eyes that were no longer a boy's. "Mom," he said softly, "the person who pulled me away all those years ago is back." For a moment, I just stared at Michael. The words didn't land all at once. They came in slowly, like a tide rolling over my feet. Cold, heavy, almost unbelievable.
"The person who pulled you away is back?" Michael nodded. His jaw tightened in a way that reminded me of when he was a boy trying not to cry after a scraped knee. I held the envelope he'd given me, feeling its weight as if there was something more inside it than paper, something living, something dangerous. "Michael," I said softly, "I need you to explain. From the beginning. No more pauses, no more hiding. I want the truth, all of it." He leaned back in the armchair, elbows on his knees, hands clasped like he was praying. He took a slow breath. Her name was Rachel. He said the name like it tasted bitter. She was older. Not old, but older than me. Maybe late 30s. She worked at a community program in town, one of those places that offered tutoring, after-school activities. She noticed me early on. She said I was smart, driven, wasted in a small town. I felt a chill run through me. "Why didn't you tell me about her?" He looked at me with a tired sadness. "Because I was 17, Mom, and when you're 17, attention feels like truth." He rubbed his hands together slowly. "She bought me things, clothes, electronics, even helped me open a bank account. She made me believe I was meant for something bigger. She made me believe she was the only one who understood me." I felt my stomach twist. I remembered him coming home with things he said he bought with savings. I remembered him being out more often, saying he was studying. I remembered an uneasiness I couldn't name at the time. Emily shifted beside me, her foot tucked under her leg, watching Michael closely. She started giving me money. At first, it was small things. Then she offered me opportunities. Investments, she called them. But it wasn't real investing. It was laundering. My heart dropped. "Michael," I breathed. "No." He nodded grimly. I didn't know at first. I thought I was helping her business. By the time I realized what it really was, it was too late. She had every message,
every transaction, every mistake I made. She threatened to expose me. She threatened to ruin me. And you were a child, I whispered again. His eyes softened. I didn't feel like one. I felt trapped. All she had to do was say a few words, and I'd be facing legal trouble. Worse, she said she'd tell you. She used you against me. A hot tear slid down my cheek before I could stop it. He leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. For a long minute, the room was quiet. The only sound was a clock ticking softly on the far wall. Then finally, I asked, "So, what made you leave her? How did you get away?" He leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. For a long minute, the room was quiet. The only sound was a clock ticking softly on the far wall. Then finally, I asked, "So, what made you leave her? How did you get away?" He said the name like it tasted bitter. He said the name like it tasted bitter. I felt my stomach twist. I remembered him coming home with things he said he bought with savings. I remembered him being out more often, saying he was studying. I remembered an uneasiness I couldn't name at the time. My heart dropped. "Michael," I breathed. "No." I felt my stomach twist. I remembered him coming home with things he said he bought with savings. I remembered him being out more often, saying he was studying. I remembered an uneasiness I couldn't name at the time. My heart dropped. "Michael," I breathed. "No." Michael nodded grimly. I didn't know at first. I thought I was helping her business. By the time I realized what it really was, it was too late. She had every message, every transaction, every mistake I made. She threatened to expose me. She threatened to ruin me. My voice shook. Like what? Like a mother who thought he was dead. The words hit hard. I pressed my palm to my chest, steadying my breath. "Why is she back?" I asked finally. "Why now?" Michael's expression changed, something like fear, something like anger. He looked at the envelope in my lap. That letter, it wasn't just an apology. It was a warning. I felt my breath hitch. Slowly, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Michael's handwriting, but there was a second paper too, thicker, printed, official looking. "What is this?" I asked. Michael leaned forward. "That is why we need to talk." My gaze dropped to the paper. It looked like a business document of some kind. Addresses, signatures, dates. I skimmed the lines, my heart pounding harder with each word. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Mom," Michael said quietly, "Rachel bought property in this area before she disappeared, and part of that property was put under my name." I froze. "Under your name? But why?" "Because she needed someone clean, someone young, someone who wouldn't raise suspicions." I stared at him horrified. "You mean you're tied to her dealings even now?" He nodded. "Yes, and she knows I'll do anything to keep you and Emily safe." I felt the room tilt. Emily reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. "She wants him back," Emily said gently. "Not as a person, as a useful piece." "Like a pawn," Michael whispered. My heart pounded. "What does she want from you?" I asked. He hesitated, then met my eyes. "She wants me to sign those properties back to her, move some money, make it look legitimate. She thinks I'll come running if she threatens my family. I stared at the document again. Are you in danger? His silence was all the answer I needed. I covered my mouth with my hand. Michael, why didn't you go to the police? Because I have no proof. Everything was verbal, everything illegal. And if I try to expose her without evidence, she'll disappear again, and this time she might not let me walk away. I breathed in slowly, trying not to let the panic take over. So you brought me here because you need me to know, I whispered. He nodded. Because she's not just a part of my past anymore. She's a threat to my present. To yours. I sat quietly, absorbing everything, feeling the weight of 12 years shift from grief to something new, something that needed strength, not tears. Finally, I looked at Michael, my voice calmer than I felt. What do you want to do? He exhaled, relief and fear mixing on his face. I want to fight back, legally, quietly. I want to take control of my own name again, but I can't do it alone. I glanced at Emily. She looked steady, but her hands were clasped tightly. And what do you need from me? I asked. He hesitated.
Michael leaned forward, his voice low, earnest. I need you to help me get the documents, the originals, the ones she forged under my name. They're locked away somewhere she thinks no one can reach. I blinked, confused. Where? He hesitated. And when he finally spoke, the answer sent a chill through my entire body. At her old property, the one she used to meet me at, the one everyone thought was abandoned. I stared at him, my heart beat pounding in my ears. You mean, I whispered, the place they searched when you first disappeared? He nodded slowly. Yes, Mom, that one. A long, heavy silence filled the room. Then he added quietly, and she's already looking for me. For a long moment, the room felt too quiet, so quiet that the sound of my own heartbeat filled my ears. Michael's words hung in the air like an unwelcome fog, thick and cold, settling in every corner of my mind. She's looking for me, he repeated softly, as almost saying it too loudly might make her appear in the doorway. I glanced at Emily. Her eyes were wide, frightened, but steady. She wasn't the panicky type, and that steadiness gave me the strength to breathe. Finally, I spoke. Michael, how much danger are we in? He rubbed the back of his neck the way he used to when he got nervous before school presentations. I don't know yet. She doesn't usually come herself. She sends people, quiet people, people who make you think you're imagining things. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Have you seen them? Here? Yes, he whispered. In the past week. Twice. I pressed a hand against my chest. Michael, you should have told me. I didn't want to scare you. I gave him a tired, knowing look. You disappeared for 12 years. Believe me when I say, Fear and I are old friends. He lowered his head, shame flickering in his expression. Emily leaned forward. Mom, exactly what do we need to get at the property? Michael hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a folded sheet of paper and slid it across the coffee table. I unfolded it carefully. It was a rough map, hand-drawn with messy lines and crossed-out marks. A small square was circled near the bottom. That, Michael said, pointing, is where she kept her private documents. Deeds, contracts, anything she needed to hide.
I frowned. You were there? He nodded slowly. She took me once, told me it was her office, a place no one would ever think to look. At the time, I didn't understand why she showed it to me. I think she wanted me to know she had everything under control. Where exactly is it? I asked. He swallowed. It's in the basement, behind a hidden panel. You'd never find it unless you knew the trick. And you know the trick? I think so, he muttered. It's been years, but I remember enough. Emily shifted in her seat. So we break into a property that technically has Michael's name on it, get the documents, and use them to prove she used him?
Michael nodded. Something like that. I stared at the map again, my fingers tightening around the edges. I'm 63, I murmured. I should be baking cookies, not planning break-ins. Michael laughed quietly, sadly. Mom, I'm not asking you to do anything dangerous. I need you with me. I can't do this alone. And suddenly, I saw him again. Not the grown man sitting in front of me, but the boy who used to knock on my door at night after a bad dream. The boy who once believed I could fix anything. My throat tightened. Then we'll go together, I said. Emily nodded. I'm coming too. Michael shook his head. Emily, no. I can't risk... Michael, she interrupted firmly. I didn't walk with you through the hardest part of your life just to sit out now. I'm not a piece of glass. I'm going. He studied her for a moment, then gave a resigned nod. When we left the living room to prepare, I stepped into the kitchen, my old safe place. The scent of the house felt the same as it did years ago, familiar, warm. But now it was layered with tension. As I filled 3 travel mugs with coffee, my hands trembled. I kept thinking about the abandoned property. I remembered when the police searched it all those years ago. I remembered the way reporters hovered like vultures, whispering about possible foul play. And now, all these years later, that place was circling back into our lives like a ghost refusing to stay buried. Michael came into the kitchen, leaning against the counter. You sure you're ready for this? He asked quietly. I looked at him, really looked at him. His face was older, sharper, marked by years he spent running, learning how to survive. But his eyes were the same. My boy's eyes. I've been waiting 12 years to have a chance to help you. So yes, I'm ready. A shadow of gratitude passed across his face. We left the house just after sunset, when the sky was turning the color of ashes. Michael drove, Emily sat in the passenger seat, and I sat in the back, clutching the map like it was a lifeline. The road to the old property was long and quiet, lined with dark trees on both sides. I watched them flash by, each one a reminder of nights I used to drive around calling Michael's name out the window. Mom, Michael said after a while, I know you have questions. I stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror. Yes, many. He gave a small nod. Ask anything. I took a steady breath. Do you hate me? For not noticing? For not stopping it? He shook his head quickly, almost too quickly. No, Mom, no. I hate her for taking advantage of a kid. I hate myself for letting her. But you did everything you knew how to do. You spent years looking for me. I loved you every single day. He reached back and squeezed my hand. I know. Emily cleared her throat gently. And you're here now. That's what matters.
We drove in silence after that, letting the road stretch out before us. When we finally pulled up to the property, my breath caught in my throat. It looked even worse than I remembered. Overgrown weeds, broken windows, a sagging front porch that looked ready to collapse. The place felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by memories. Michael parked the car behind a group of trees, out of sight. "Okay," he said quietly. We go in through the side door. It was the only one she didn't reinforce. "Why didn't she reinforce it?" I asked. He hesitated. "Because she thought I'd never come back." We followed him through the tall grass, stepping over roots and broken boards. The side door hung crooked on one hinge. "Emily," Michael said softly, "you stay close to Mom." Emily nodded, slipping her arm through mine. Her warmth steadied me. Michael pushed the door open slowly. It groaned loudly like an old animal waking up. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Dust hung in the light of our flashlights. The floors creaked as we walked, and the smell was a mixture of mold and something metallic. "This used to be her office?" I whispered. Michael nodded. "Before it got abandoned, before everything went bad." He led us down a narrow hallway. At the end of it was a door covered in peeling paint. He opened it carefully, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. "I don't like basements," Emily muttered. "I don't think anyone does," I whispered. We descended slowly. My hands skimmed the wall for balance. At the bottom, there was a long room, empty except for old boxes and broken furniture. "This way," Michael said, walking toward a far wall. He knelt down, feeling along the wooden paneling with his fingertips. I remember there being a small notch, a loose board. He moved his hand left, then right, then paused. "Here." He pressed something, and a section of the wall shifted slightly. I gasped. Emily whispered, "Oh my God!" Michael pushed the panel open, revealing a hidden compartment no larger than a closet. Inside were two metal filing boxes, dusty but locked. "That's what we need," he said. He reached inside and grabbed the first box. Emily helped with the second. As they placed them on the floor, Michael pulled a small metal tool from his pocket. "Picked this up years ago. Thought I'd never use it." The lock clicked open with a soft snap. Inside were stacks of documents, bundles tied with rubber bands, envelopes, legal papers stamped with old dates. My stomach tightened. "Are these—" "Yes," he whispered. "These are the documents she forged. Property deeds, false signatures, proof she used my name. This is everything." Emily opened the second box. "Holy, Michael, we can take her down with this." But just as she said it, something outside made us all freeze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, heavy footsteps on the floor above us. Michael shot me a look. Emily's hand tightened on my arm. Then we heard another sound that made the hair on the back of my neck rise. A woman's voice, soft, calm, familiar. "Michael," the voice called, like a mother calling a child in from the yard. "I know you're here." My blood turned to ice. Michael mouthed one word, "Rachel." And in that moment, everything in the room shifted. The air felt tighter. My heart pounded so loudly, I thought it would echo. Michael grabbed both filing boxes, pushing them toward me and Emily. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The footsteps moved closer to the basement door. We weren't alone. Not anymore.